Love this podcast? Support us by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Hit the link in the episode description to support us now. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Yes or no? Has a Disney movie ever made you laugh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Has a Disney movie ever made you sing along to it?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Has a Disney movie ever made you cry?
Yes.
Mhm.
Now, has a Disney movie ever disturbed you?
Yes.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Now, does Pinocchio fall into any of those categories for you?
It falls into one of them.
Yeah, it does fall into one of them for me too. And that is what we're talking about today. Disney's Pinocchio, the 1940 film, and the new 2022, in quotation marks, live action film.
Right.
Because, there's not much that's live here, guys.
Mhm.
So, but we're live and we're talking about it with you right now. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rolando,
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals
an original podcast.
about
Unoriginality.
unoriginality. All right, well, we are joined by Eddie Z.
Hey, everyone.
And what of those checks of the yes or no's would you say Pinocchio falls under? Did you cry in it? Did you laugh in it? Did you sing along to it? Or were you disturbed by it?
For me, it would be just disturbing. As
Yeah.
a kid, it was it's the Pleasure Island scene. It was always a rough one to watch. Although upon rewatching it, I was just like, oh yeah, no, this is my kid brain kind of like making much ado about nothing, because like it was watching it as an adult. I'm just like, oh, what was I
I've seen
scared about?
worse.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe not in a children's movie, but yeah, there are scarier scenes in films. Eddie?
I guess singing along, everyone knows the When You Wish Upon a Star, but it's not a sing along song.
No, I mean, I guess, but not in the context of this film, at least. You're not like, motivated to be like, oh, everybody sing along.
Yeah, it's not like Under the Sea.
It's not. If you actually take that song out of the movie doesn't work in terms of being a classic. I almost feel like the legacy of Pinocchio is very much dedicated to that song because it's kind of become the Disney anthem. Yeah, let's just talk about it. And what we'll probably do today is, because this is the exact same story in both films, so we'll talk about the story and then compare, how they were handled in both stories, which is remarkably similar and yet very different, which was also kind of the case for Disney's The Lion King, which we covered back in 2019. Another quote-unquote live-action remake. So I don't really want to get into the history of the story of Pinocchio, but needless to say, Pinocchio is a children's novel. It hails from Italy, and it came out in the 1880s, and it's called The Adventures of Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
And this story has been done before. I mean, it's actually getting done again today. I mean, not today, again this year.
Right.
With Guillermo del Toro, and he's doing a straight to Netflix one.
And then there was like a straight to, I think, Redbox starring. Oh, it was like it went viral on TikTok. It has like bad voice acting. It's like, Father,
I want to see the world.
yeah, in like the most homosexual voice imaginable. Father, when will I get to see the world? And he put like, oh, who is the actor? Pauly Shore. I think it was Pauly Shore.
There's an actual Pauly Shore one?
It's a Pauly Shore Pinocchio. It's Pinocchio, a true story. He does a voice for Pinocchio.
Wow.
If you haven't seen the trailer, you should. It's very, very cringy.
Well, this isn't the first time that there was kind of a live action remake of Pinocchio. One happened in the 90s with Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh, that's right. I
And
remember
he
that
was
one.
actually like wooden. He looked very different from the Pinocchio that we grew up at least seeing the images from, if you didn't see the film.
Did you ever see the film?
I saw it when I was a kid, but I did not rewatch it for this. Sorry.
No. I mean, we only had to talk. I mean, this is a Disney remake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not talking about the Pinocchio.
We are pretty much focusing on the Disney remaking itself. I mean, there's silent films of Pinocchio. There are films in the 30s. in the 70s and other countries of Pinocchio, and we're just not talking about any of them, and we're also not here to tell you the story of Pinocchio because one, I've never read it, and two, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk to you about the year 1940. Let's set it up. Black and white movies were primarily the thing. I believe the film that won that year for Best Picture was The Grapes of Wrath.
Oh,
and now
God, really?
the John Steinbeck, yeah. Yes, and which is a pretty okay film.
It's it's absolutely the way to describe it.
Yes, it's pretty much okay. Charlie Chaplin made The Great Dictator, his scathing satire on Hitler and fascism.
Mm-hmm.
There was another film called The Philadelphia Story that came out, which is one of my absolute favorite films, and actually my cat is named after a character in that movie. And two Disney movies were released that year, Fantasia and Pinocchio, which was Walt Disney's follow-up to his wildly successful film of 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Wait, which is a follow-up technically, Fantasia or Pinocchio?
I do believe that it is Pinocchio that is the second film.
Okay.
And I just confirmed that. It is the second animated feature film by Disney.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot to live up to because Snow White really was a smash and a game changer, and it really solidified him as a huge presence. And when it came out, it was a huge movie. It had huge critical acclaim. It won a couple Academy Awards. I mean, it wasn't that successful in the box office, but that's mainly because of the war.
Right.
But when it got reissued a couple years later, it became a huge success. And then it's been put in the vaults and released from the vaults a bunch of times.
Yeah. As Disney does.
And this is definitely one of the most iconic Disney movies, mainly because of the song "When You Wish Upon a Star," and I think also the Disney parks, like Fantasyland and like the Pinocchio kind of like aesthetic that is in there. So it's just kind of like one of the iconic images. So it was a matter of time now that they're doing their whole live action remakes that they would pretty much decide to do Pinocchio, but they decided to do it as a straight to Disney Plus one, which is just like in the Lady and the Tramp was a straight to Disney Plus, and just like Peter Pan will be straight to Disney Plus. So I think it's
Peter Pan's gonna be
films.
a straight to Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't know that there was a Peter Pan in development.
So when did you guys see this first film?
I mean, I saw it when I was a kid, growing up in the Bronx.
And did you watch it a lot growing up?
I watched it a few times. Yeah.
Okay, Eddie.
I saw this as a kid, but I did not watch it a lot. I saw it once and never saw it again.
Same. Yeah. I knew of Pinocchio because I had like Disney sing-alongs and whatnot, or I saw like the commercial for it, because they always like promoted all their other films before you watched the main film, but it was not my cup of tea. And I rewatched it for the first time in years, 2 years ago, and it was just kind of like a holy shit moment when I rewatched the film. When did you rewatch it? Recently?
I just rewatched it today.
So these films are remarkably similar.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just get into the plot and we'll talk about the two of them. Both films open up from the perspective, or at least we're introduced to the narrator of the story, which is Jiminy Cricket. And Jiminy Cricket was voiced by Cliff Edwards, who was known as like Ukulele Ike back in the early talking pictures. And he had that really like iconic voice that I think is why When You Wish Upon a Star is so good, because Cliff Edwards sings it. But he is a talking cricket who's pretty much like telling you the story about Geppetto, a wood carver. He's a woodworker?
Yeah.
Or a wood carver.
He has a lot of cuckoo clocks also, though, for some reason.
But yeah, he's a toy maker and a cuckoo clock maker in some point in time in Italy, and he lives alone with his cat and his fish, and he carves himself up a puppet that looks like a real boy who he really wishes to be a real boy. So we meet his life, and we see all his cuckoo clocks and all the scenarios that he's painted on it. And both films take a good chunk of time showing us the scenes on the cuckoo clocks.
Mm-hmm.
In the original, there are more classic images or what have you. But in the new one, they were actually, I guess, Easter eggs to other Disney films. Not even Easter eggs. They were just like, all these cuckoo clocks are based on other Easter films. Which,
Right.
What did you think about that?
I didn't like Roger Rabbit being in it, right? Because Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit have a very distinct style that is not from that time period.
Yes.
Because I don't know what time period in Italy this is, pre-war, I assume, but I don't know.
I mean, we could assume that it takes place in the time that it was written, which is the 1880s.
Okay, fine. So there you go.
But it's Italy in the Enchanted Forest.
Right, as Eddie keeps saying, this is
another
not
realm.
Italy that we know. This is Italy from like some enchanted area.
It's another realm.
It is,
but,
yes.
Italy nonetheless. So no, but yeah, I didn't. I mean, it was fine. It didn't take me that much out of the story.
Well, so this new film, the 2022 film, was directed by Robert Zemeckis,
who directed Roger Rabbit, which
yes,
is not even an homage, right?
Yeah, I know. I wonder if he was like contractually obligated. He's like, well, we're gonna throw my movie in there. But he also did Back to the Future. He also did Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump. Most recently, he did Witches, or Roald Dahl's The Witches, which we covered on this podcast. So to say that his career has not, has been kind of in a slump is.
It's been in a slump. I mean, it's a dive because it's a shame because Roger Rabbit is like one of, if not my favorite film.
Yeah. In the original film, we're just painted this quaint little scene of this, lonely old guy who just is surrounded by way too many wood carvings of people or of situations, whether they're on his cuckoo clocks or in his toys, and he's lonely. And he has a cute little cat and a cute little fish, but like he needs a little bit more. It didn't really come off even though it's the exact same scene and we're introduced the same exact way by Jiminy Cricket to Geppetto. We have Tom Hanks playing him.
Mm-hmm.
And I've voiced last week how I feel about how Tom Hanks is now as an actor. And I kind of feel the same way about him as Geppetto.
I mean, Geppetto was not I don't know why he did this, to be quite honest. Like, this is not like, he might be, he's the second best thing in this film, but it's not like, I don't know, like Tom Hanks kind of wastes, I don't know. This was a paycheck for Tom Hanks. You know what I mean? But
yes,
but his performance, I don't know, like he didn't phone it in. You can tell when someone phones it in, like they have no desire to be there. Like he actually seemed to try to do his best to be Geppetto. And it wasn't like, that's why I don't think it wasn't the best performance I've seen in Tom Hanks, but it wasn't like, I appreciate the man that he still is just like, all right, this is going to suck, but I'll try. I'm going to try.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at this point, he's good at what he does. So even if to me, because I think he was phoning it in, his phoning it in is still doing a pretty okay job.
If he phoned it in,
not bad at what he does,
was able to fool me, then yeah, even more kudos to him. Eddie, do you think he was phoning it in? I don't know if he was.
I think that the role didn't require so much a stretch for him, like being an older, nice man. I mean, Tom Hanks is the sweetheart of America kind of thing. So I didn't think. I mean, at the end, I feel like Tom Hanks was the famous face of this live action movie.
Right.
That live action in quotation marks. So if you're going to have something that actually ends up being the thing that draws people in, I think it's because it was Tom Hanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tom Hanks has nothing to work with. There is no cat there. There is no fish there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's not even an actual cabin that he's maybe on a set with. And maybe even Pinocchio, it was not there.
No, I mean, most of it was CGI.
Yeah, so he kind of just like, he had to really, really act instead of acting just like with his voice or with his, just doing it for the people and like being able to be free. He had all these constraints on him where he had the camera rolling and he was required to like build the world around him. And that's got to be difficult. And I'll give it to him. It's got to be difficult. And again, like, was he terrible? No, but it just, for being the only alive person in the frame half the time, I forgot sometimes that he wasn't animated in like a weird way, because he just kind of was giving the same energy as everybody else, in my opinion.
Look, let's be very honest here. Like, these are fucking Disney remakes here. Like, I know I'm in for probably a shit film, and this movie unfortunately lived up to that expectation.
Yeah.
You know
I
what I
guess
mean?
he gave me the same energy that he gives in like Saturday Night Live skits, where I'm like, okay, well, he's embodying the character, but it's also like there's not really any real peaks and valleys here going on with this performance.
Do you
But
expect many peaks and valleys in this role though?
well, I would actually have been more emotionally involved had there been. Yeah, I would be like, you know what? He's fucking giving it his all. Like he's giving me a real performance here, and you know what? I'm going with him on this journey.
Okay.
But other than like when you don't give that energy in the movie, then I'm not like willing to go anywhere with you. I'm just kind of like watching you like, okay, I get it. You got paid very well for this.
yeah,
Well, someone watching it.
So I don't know. Like I think he played, like Eddie said, he played like the nice, gentle old man and stuff. It wasn't a stretch for him, and it was this guy who was very, very much alone. In the film, the live action adaptation, they gave you a little bit more hints that like he's alone because his wife is dead and their child died at a very young age, right? That wasn't in the original film. So they try to give you a little bit of backstory. It wasn't even like expositionally, right? Like they were just like kind of just dropping it with like some pictures that we would see close-ups of and stuff. I don't know. Like I didn't hate Geppetto. Like honestly, like I said, he was the second best thing in the film, and I stand by that.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. So he makes this little boy, and he very much wants this little boy to be alive, and he calls him Pinocchio because he's made out of wood, specifically pine, which must be an Italian thing. And then he goes to sleep, and then we meet the blue fairy because he wished upon a star that he could have indeed, Pinocchio could be real. So the blue fairy comes, and in the original, she's this very pretty white blonde woman.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, she's played by Cynthia Erivo, who's actually going to be playing Elphaba in the Wicked films because they're splitting up into two.
I did not know that, nor did I care, to be quite honest.
What?
Yeah,
I don't know if I need to see a live. I think. What
do you mean? We saw the play.
I know, but I don't know if a live action adaptation of Wicked is anything we need. If anything, it should have been an animated film.
Okay. Well, with having her in it and her voice, they give her a little bit more to work with because in the original, the Blue Fairy is kind of stone coldish. Like she's just kind of like there to tell you the facts and not really there to like be friendly with you or to make jokes with you or, she's just like, okay, you have to be brave, true and unselfish.
I really think that your dislike of this Pinocchio movies are kind of really...
I didn't get that at all.
Like,
are we talking about the original film?
Yeah. I don't know, she was trying to be fun. I get my rewatching it is just like a very, very waspy white lady, right? Trying to be funny, trying to...
You think she was trying to be funny?
She's trying to be warm and stuff, and it's just like, I think...
Well, yeah, she's trying to be warm, which she's not. She's cold.
But are you sure just not reading into the color palette that they gave her and stuff? I don't know.
But she's blue? Because
she's blue, right? She's a blue fairy. I don't know. Like I didn't... In the original one, I never felt like she was cold, right? I just felt like she, she was a fairy. She was ethereal. She was from another... I don't know where she was from. A realm?
Let's put her then in direct contrast to how Cynthia Erivo plays her, or Vivo? I'm sorry, I keep saying her name wrong. Because she actually does a lot more with the role where she tries to add a little bit of her personality. She's like kind of flustered and she doesn't know exactly where she is and she tries to make jokes and whatnot.
She
tries to put a little bit life into it. I think she was trying to do kind of like the one from Cinderella, like that kind of fairy who's...
I haven't...
So I think there's an interesting element that was presented that makes it, that gives me the creepy element of Pinocchio was that the
new fairy?
Yeah.
Okay.
This blue fairy, she got a wish from Geppetto, but the wish was mixed with grief and a sense of wanting, but knowing he shouldn't. Right. So this is why it almost gets the sense of that she was trying to say, this is why Pinocchio, you cannot be a real boy right now. Because the wish that was given had a sense of longing, but I don't think I should go there. So this is why he was given this life, but he had to be the life within the frame that he was created in and not transformed into a real boy, because then that had to be a process.
Yeah, so I think that the new film realized a lot of the inherent flaws with the original Pinocchio, which is that, everybody treats Pinocchio like he wasn't born 10 minutes ago. Like
Mhm.
they all are just like, all right, you have to be this, this, and that, and you have to do this, this, and that for your father. And here are all your responsibilities, person who literally was just brought to life and who is actually made out of wood. And I think that the new film really tried everything they could to kind of rectify that ludicrousness, because at the end of the day, like, I know it's based on a fairy tale, but it's also kind of like ridiculous that everyone would have such high expectations of what Pinocchio is and what he should be. So I think, to Eddie's point,
Mhm.
that's why she's like saying, I can't make you like, they're making her more sympathetic and also like giving her more of a reason to do what she did, which is,
Really?
I see that Geppetto, wanted this, but
Mhm.
I see that he wanted it from a place that, maybe he didn't realize why he wanted it, or he wanted it for the wrong reasons. So therefore, I'll grant this wish, but, with constraints upon it. But I think that's just Disney trying to, be
But
a little woke.
But
at the same, this is how you don't get a Pet Cemetery situation.
That too. Yeah.
I don't. What responsibilities did they give the animated Pinocchio?
They're like,
Three
he's
things.
dancing with him, right? After, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, the Blue Fairy says you have to be brave, true, and unselfish.
That's
But they're
what
like
the
dancing,
both of them.
celebrating. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, yeah. Somebody else wished this for you. So now this is what you, Pinocchio, have to do because somebody else wished it. It's like when parents say, wow, I gave birth to you. It's like, I never asked to be born. Why are you putting all this pressure on me? Right.
My read on the actual Pinocchio story is how good little boys should behave. This is a very sexist story. This is not about how like children should behave. This is a story about how good little boys should behave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't like they didn't give him any responsibility. Like he wasn't like this is also magic. It's like it's fairy shit that created this wooden being. So like yes, you're gonna treat it differently. Like the only thing that I actually appreciate out of the remake here is the fact that like I think some people reacted with the horror of seeing a puppet come to life and kicking it out of school, for example.
So I actually agree with you with what the story is supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to be a good boy. I do agree with that, but I think what you and I maybe don't agree on is the fact that I think that the original film got a little lost in how to convey this message. And I think that the new film is trying to rectify the ways that it got a little lost. Right? So just because the moral is be a good little boy doesn't mean that they were correct in saying, hey, you were just born and somebody wished this upon you. Now, this is your duty to do this, and you are responsible for it. And you are responsible literally for somebody else's wish. And then, like, Geppetto meets Pinocchio, they dance, he puts him to bed and says, you have to go to school in the morning. Immediately just throws him into the world without even explaining anything. So really, technically, everything's Geppetto's fault. It's not Pinocchio's fault.
Well,
right?
I don't disagree with you, but the Blue Fairy in the remake was just like not only was she aloof, she was kind of, I don't know. I thought she was a little dismissive, and she kind of half-assed her job.
Why? How did she half-ass it?
What are you talking about? Like she literally had no idea where she was, what she was doing. She's just like, what's going on?
Because she's restrained in the content of his wish.
Mm-hmm.
She's not doing this on her own free will.
Okay,
she is granting a wish, but she states the way he wished it, what he wished, and where he was at. It's like it's hitting each other. The intent and the desire keep on hitting each other because he's wishing for his son back from the dead.
Right.
That's what he's wishing for. That's what he would love for his son to come back.
So I guess
right, and then but at the same time too, he knows that's wrong.
But
there's something about that's wrong. So
yeah,
that's why it's like I'm giving you life. I'm giving the object that he created to look like his son life, right? But with the restraint of that, I'm not gonna give you a human body. But this is something you have to earn.
But then why grant the wish?
Because he wished it upon the star. Yes, she does.
She absolutely
does. Yes, she does. Like, you don't know this. You don't know this. You don't know. You don't know about fairy magic. You don't know about fairy. You can't talk. You can't talk. You don't know anything about the magical system in this world. Okay, she has to grant it. It's done. He wished upon a
So
star.
anyone,
He wished
so
on
wait,
the wishing
so
star.
anyone who's wishing upon her star, she has to grant those wishes. Is that is that
Yeah,
what we're assuming the rules are?
And I think also the individual has to be good of heart.
Okay, are we? I don't know the rules of magic you have accused me of. So
You don't know. You don't know. This is not your cup of tea. This isn't your cup of tea. This is your cup of tea.
Because she granted it, we only have to assume that is her duty to do that, right?
Mhm.
Or at least maybe she has some foresight into the future that's like she knows, okay, this will bring me to where we want to go. So this is how I will grant this wish.
Yeah. Yeah, cause she also then the new blue fairy also starts dropping a rhyme about Pinocchio's soon-to-be journey. It's just like, well, where did that come from? You haven't been speaking rhymes this whole time. I actually do not think this was the writing for this fairy was weird. I didn't like it.
I mean, the writing for the whole film was a little
Absolutely
weird.
The writing for the majority of the film, yes, is weird.
Yeah, it didn't bother me as much for the blue fairy.
But the blue fairy one, the blue fairy
bother
thing
me.
did bother. I think the blue fairy, I don't know, it just didn't feel the same as the original one. I thought she looked great though as the blue fairy though. I did I loved her look, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe they should have made her more transparent.
I thought she was perfectly believable as a blue
too
fairy.
Too bright.
So. I don't know. I have nitpicks in other areas. I think the blue fairy was just fine.
You just
the least
awoke
of
it out
my
of me
worries.
because I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. So another character actually that we haven't really talked about is Jiminy Cricket and the role that he plays in these films, because he kind of just stumbles across Geppetto's home because he needs a home, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to insert myself in this situation and I'll be your conscience, Pinocchio, because you need one. And, they need a sidekick. Every Disney character needs a sidekick. And in the new film, and the original, he was voiced by Cliff Edwards. And the new one, he's voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's truly doing his best impersonation of Jiminy Cricket, I thought. What do you think of Jiminy Cricket? What do you think of him in the original? And how do you feel about this new one?
I've always hated Jiminy Cricket.
You've hated him?
I've never liked Jiminy Cricket. I think he's so ugly. And as Eddie pointed out, Jiminy Cricket is absolutely useless.
Oh, yeah, because he doesn't really help at all.
He doesn't do anything.
He's always missing the opportunity to help out. He's always lagging behind.
The only thing about the new Jiminy Cricket I liked was the fact that when presented with the option of being his conscience, his initial reaction was no, thank you. Right. And I was just like, yeah, that seems, who wants to be the conscience of a child?
I don't mind Jiminy Cricket, but I also sidekicks aren't meant to be. I shouldn't say that.
I always hated Jiminy Cricket.
I thought that the impersonation or the voice acting job was interesting. After a while, I too was over Jiminy Cricket, but it definitely seemed like he was really trying to do his best, ode to the original. And it sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
I didn't even know it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt until I looked it up.
Right now? Oh.
No. I looked it up after the film. I want to know who was who. But I didn't even, and then I was just like, oh, I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, pretty good job. I can't even picture him using that voice. So the new film actually inserts a couple of new characters. In both films, at some point, Geppetto realizes that Pinocchio has to go to school. In the original film, he realizes pretty much within 5 minutes of meeting Pinocchio that tomorrow he has to go to school because that's what little boys do.
Right.
There's no questions or qualms about it. He's going to school.
Right.
Whereas in the new one, we kind of see a little montage of their life together and them just enjoying, the cat, the fish, Pinocchio and Geppetto, their lives until one day Geppetto's like, okay, fine. I think maybe you might want to go to school, and Pinocchio's thrilled about it.
Which felt like Geppetto was dropping responsibility there. Just okay, you know what? I don't want to deal with you, so let's send you off to school.
I know the intent was he wants to make Pinocchio happy, and that's what Pinocchio wants. But
did Pinocchio want that?
Pinocchio doesn't know what he wants because he's made out of wood. So why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
It's universally the stupidest thing in both stories is that he sends him to school. But
I would agree. He doesn't even walk him to school because in the remake they make it a point to say it's a complicated story why I have the shop. We never hear the complicated story why he has a shop if he's not selling anything. But why is he why can't you just take him to school?
Yeah.
Is it just an Italian thing? We just let our children run free?
I mean, as far back as the 80s, as recently as the 80s, I should say, people just let their children out of their sight and said, "Go and do stuff,"
Mm-hmm.
and then children got
Then
abducted and bad
helicopter.
things happened.
No,
So
it was a
we
helicopter
hadn't learned
parenting became a
anything for
thing.
like 100 years, from the 1880s to the 1980s. It's like, hey, keep better track of your kids. So I think that's just how people were. Like especially the kids were all like holding on to like a clother or a long cloth, and
Yeah,
that's how they were
I think it was
guided
like
by the teacher.
a rope.
Yeah, even though that was in the new one, I don't specifically remember that being in the 1941. I mean, he watched them, but then he just like goes and follows them.
I feel like that's something too, because I see that now.
Oh yeah, I see that. It was the daycare, right?
With the
Daycare.
kids.
Yeah.
Daycare.
That's how they keep care of kids. Yeah.
It's always so funny seeing them on the leash.
But people don't leave their houses to do that. That's like when they're there in daycare and they take them for like a walk. Or
I guess it's like their version of a school bus.
I guess so.
You know?
And now in the new version, before we meet the next couple of characters that are in both versions, we meet a new character named Sophia the Seagull, played by Lorraine Bracco, who Geppetto has a relationship with because he's friends with all animals, it seems.
Is that who played Sophia?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Melfi?
Sophia. Yes.
Okay. I don't know why they introduced Sophia. And that was my reaction when watching this. I'm just like, why?
Yeah, why is there a seagull here? I mean, all she really does, at least in the beginning, is bring Jiminy to Pinocchio.
Yeah, and then she has a little bit of a role in the end.
Yeah, she'll come back, but like for right now, it's like, okay, so she just brings Jiminy to Pinocchio, and that's it. And then we don't see her for a long time. Again, unnecessary. Most of the characters that are added in this film are completely unnecessary. Because they don't really do anything for the plot, or if they do, it wasn't necessary for the plot. So in both stories, while Pinocchio is on his way to school, immediately he meets two mischievous people, and they are two of the only anthropomorphic, is that the word?
That's the word.
Characters in the whole Pinocchio, which raises a lot of questions as to why and who the fuck are they.
Yes.
We meet con artist Fox, Honest John, and his cat partner Gideon. And they see Pinocchio as a meal ticket, and that they're going to sell him, or pretty much sell him to Stromboli, who is a Italian puppeteer who is on the road. And they propose the actor's life to Pinocchio and pretty much say, you don't want to go to school. You'll make your father more proud if you go to Stromboli and become an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when, the film starts to take its wholesome shift. And things start getting real and dark for Pinocchio. And this is just the beginning. So, in the original, I do think the characters are voiced by Walter Catlett. I don't think the Gideon talks.
I don't think the cat talks. Just the fox.
Just the fox in both versions. And he's smooth talking. I think in the new one, he's played by
Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys, I don't really have much to say to them other than they like totally suck.
I mean,
in terms of the story.
So they're real characters. They're named in these films, but they're real characters from the book, right? The fox and the cat. They do lead Pinocchio astray in the novel, and I don't know. Like, I never liked them, I guess, right? But you're not supposed to.
Yeah, you're not supposed to like them.
I will say, I think the animation for Honest John in the remake was my favorite part of the film, to be honest.
Oh, that was your first favorite thing?
That was my top favorite thing. Like, I think they did such a great job animating him, and he looked so... I think I enjoyed his scenes because I think the animation was actually very, very well done there. I hated Pinocchio, right? Like, I'll say this right off the bat. Like, I think the Pinocchio animation looked whack as hell. But Honest John looked cool as fuck, is my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember really being struck with his animation, but I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought that the jokes that they gave him in the new one were like, I don't know if many of the jokes landed for me. Maybe the Chris Pine one.
The Chris
did,
Pine was a
that
good one.
It.
I thought that was a good one.
But then that was it. It also just like they really lucked out with the timing of Chris Pine being like everywhere right now on social media.
That's true.
So, but other than that, like, I don't know. I mean, everything that was in the new one at least was so similar in a lot of ways to the original that I didn't really feel too much of a difference. Like I think the Blue Fairy might be one of the only big differences in my opinion.
Big
Apart
differences.
from the new characters that they added in, you know.
Mhm.
So it's not like anything. He just brought a couple of jokes in, but it didn't really feel all that different from the original to me. And in the original, the characters felt, you know, really sly and gross to me. The next thing in the plot is Stromboli, where we meet Fabiana and stuff like that.
That's a character. Yeah, Fabienne. That's her name.
That's her name, Fabiana. Yeah. I feel like again, not as disturbing as it was in the original, which may be good or bad. I mean, it's highly effective in the original, the Stromboli part, and just how terrible he is and how gross he is.
Oh yeah. No, I would agree. I think Stromboli is scarier in the animated film
Absolutely.
than he is in the new one. In the other one, he's just kind of like cartoonishly villainous almost.
Yeah.
Where in the other one he was like just almost like maliciously villainous.
No, absolutely.
And also, is his like a? I just asked Eddie like when we were watching. Is this a racist portrayal of Romani people? The new one. I just felt like the new one was way more racist than the 1940s one.
Wow, that's a first.
I know that was like I thought that was like I kind of was like checking. I'm just like, is this borderline racist? Like this is. I feel like this is a problematic portrayal of either Italians or the Romani folk. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think he's Italian though, because Stromboli is Italian.
I don't
the
know.
name,
He
so.
could just be taking on the persona of an Italian to make that coin.
I think it's racist of you to read Romani.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I think that.
Am I the
I think
problem?
that's really the question here.
I'm the
Yeah.
drama.
Are you
on this one.
racist?
But yeah, I will tell you my biggest qualm with the remake with the Stromboli scene is that here you had the actual opportunity to use real marionettes to juxtapose the Pinocchio character,
Mm-hmm.
and they chose to do everything CGI. And I was livid about this. I was just like, this was your chance. Like, this is your chance to show how Pinocchio is different. They chose to, and I understand it must be a dying art, and like how many people know how to play marionettes like that. Was like, you find them.
No,
You
they
find
exist.
them.
They exist.
Tom Cruise would have learned if you told him he's going to be Geppetto, he would have learned to play the marionette
And carve wood.
and carve wood. Yeah.
This is true. He
So,
would, yeah, it would
oh my
evolve
god, I
into
guess I'm
real.
saying that Tom Cruise is the better actor than Tom Hanks.
No, I'm just can't go that far.
After he escapes from Stromboli, where he learns that he has to lie and does the famous, his nose grows every time he lies.
Oh, actually, that reminds me of that scene. So that also I had issue with the remake though.
Okay.
Okay, so in the original one, he lies and he's lying to the Blue Fairy who shows up to like save him.
Mm-hmm.
In the remake, he's lying to Jiminy, and they figure out that the lying is what makes your nose grow. So then Pinocchio tells a lie on purpose to get the nose to grow, but I don't know if that should count because he's lying with the intent of
Lying.
like he's
he knows
lying.
he's lying. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows he's lying, but he's lying because he wants the nose to grow. So I don't think that's a lie per se. That's just
like
lying.
he's outsmarting his nose's magic.
Right. So I don't think that I was kind of like, I think I paused it to talk with Eddie for like 20 minutes about this, about why this upsets me, because I don't know. I just think that like they're taking the rules and they're kind of like
Bending them.
they're not only bending them, but they're giving them a 2020 read or 2022 read on them, right? Like a contemporary read. Like I think nowadays kids are more likely to outsmart the system, right? Than they were in 1880.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I think that's, I was kind of like, I don't know. It felt cheap.
I would agree with that. He's definitely coming off as smarter for someone who's been alive for not very long too.
Mhm.
Where it's just like, how did he learn how to do that? He just figured this out about his nose. So maybe we should talk about this other new character that they added in that we had mentioned earlier called Fabiana, who
Mhm.
is supposed to add a little bit more to the plot. She takes away from like the Blue Fairy coming back, constantly having to save Pinocchio in situations, and particularly like she came back to rescue him from Stromboli. But now we have Fabiana for him to interact with and create a relationship with. In a
Yeah.
weird
So the Blue
way.
Fairy is kind of like this Deus Ex Machina character that comes in and like kind of saves the day for Pinocchio to save his family, Where in this one, they took once Blue Fairy comes into play, we don't see her again. Instead, what we get is this other new character who, tries to create a friendship with Pinocchio. But I thought it was just like, I was always kind of like more worried. Like, are they? I don't like. Is he supposed to like is he's gonna be her age when he becomes a real boy, and then they're gonna like end up happily ever after? That's what I kept thinking. It's just like, this is a weird story. And also, they couldn't make it clear. Like, was the puppet that she was controlling also possibly alive?
No.
She was doing weird things.
Yeah, but I think there was I got more the message of seeing different. Like, I see you, Pinocchio. Like, I'm different too. You know.
Yeah.
You're this new life, existing, and you're innocent, and you're figuring out the world, but because you're special, people are gonna take advantage of it. And there she is too. She is herself, like, she has her handicap, but she transforms her handicap, and she makes herself even like the
more powerful.
No, the ballerina itself, the one that she controls. The way she structures the harness around her on her foot. It gives her like she when she sings the song, she says, "I'm half marionette." Like, I'm half
creepy.
Well, I think it's an interesting look about like, like
disabilities.
Well, different, existing, like not what people perceive as whatever parameters is normal, whatever people decide is normal, but existing and living your true self, and it just happens to be unique and something new, like Pinocchio is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think that's what her intent was, but it didn't really, for me, add anything to the story other than like maybe, okay, I can give the read that Pinocchio is also like a representative of the other, people who are different. Fine. Okay. I could do that too. But in terms of actual story or plot, like, she didn't save him for anything. She didn't really like, Jiminy Cricket rescued him from Stromboli. She wasn't part of the Pleasure Island. She wasn't part of the whale.
She's the last.
How does she figure in?
She's the last temptation, though, and she's also, as by not being she's not a bad. There's
choosing between goods.
Yes, right.
That's right.
So
yeah,
it's just like she represents the choice between she's giving him like a life that, like, okay, he'll not only be famous, but like also he'll have a friend. But at the same time, he realized, like, but my father, I need to help him, and he makes what we would deem the right choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if this was like real 1880s Italy, I don't think either choice is the right choice, because I don't know what the circumstances in 1880s Italy were, but I don't know. I'm assuming.
Why are you getting caught up in that?
I'm getting very caught up.
It's a magical realm, damn it, and it's a village in a magical realm. That's it. That's it.
Because I mean, look, wild circus men could just kidnap children. They turn them into donkeys, Like, it's a scary place, Italy.
And then right after this situation, he finds himself, Pinocchio, in his last huge traumatizing situation, which is he is invited to Pleasure Island.
Wait, you would count this as his last huge traumatizing? There's one major one that I would say is the most traumatizing.
I feel like this is the big one.
This one's pretty traumatizing, but I don't know. Getting eaten by a whale is pretty traumatizing in my opinion.
Well, I mean, they didn't die, so I think this is pretty fucking terrible. This is, to me, the peak of the fucked upness, is that essentially, if you haven't seen Pinocchio, spoiler alert, but they go to fucking Pleasure Island, and it's just like amazing. It's everything a kid could want. There's like total freedom, but lo and behold, they are drinking beverages that will slowly turn them into donkeys. And this is a really fucked up metaphor for pretty much child trafficking.
That's okay. I don't think that's It's about being like, if you don't go to school, if you're not an honest boy, you're going to be a degenerate. You're going to be the lowest
You're going to be a jackass.
You're going, not only just jackass, but you're going to be doing hard manual labor. Keep in mind, like, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution here, where like we're trying to get people away from those kinds of jobs because there's a more
child trafficking was very much a thing back then.
I mean, child trafficking has always been a thing, but I don't think
so it's not like it's not just like the industrial age, you're going to be working this job. I think it's also like, hey, by the way, you will be abducted and sold. Like that was actually a fear in the 1880s.
Mm-hmm. And it was
and
also
like
used...
if you stay up out late and like you're not, you're being a bad boy and you're being hedonistic and doing stuff you shouldn't do, like then you will be abducted.
I mean, it was also used in other fairy tales too, like the Pied Piper.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, the Pied Piper stole children, right? After he stole the rats.
He stole the rats. He got rid of the rats, but then he stole.
Yeah.
He stole the
also,
kids.
Fairy tales were fucked up back then. They did not like shy away. Like, no, you were going to be abducted and sold and trafficked against your will if you don't stay home. Like they were straight up, not like they tiptoe against things nowadays.
Okay. All right. I think it's this the scene is literally about that. I don't know if it was, I don't think that was necessarily the intent. I guess I took like the more like fantastical metal. It's a fantasy that we're watching, you know what I mean? So I was like really, again, with the morality of stuff.
Yeah, but that's why they physically didn't actually show, and they just were like, "Oh, you just turn into a donkey and you'll be a jackass." But that's exactly what was happening. That's
doing the hard labor and stuff.
And like, yeah, it's still like, it's interesting that they kept it in because it's pretty dark. But I guess in the 1940s too, they weren't really.
So I was hoping
with that.
I was hoping like, because this movie was like close to 2 hours.
Oh God!
All right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like, I wonder if somehow they go back to this, like they save the kids, like this time around, like some way, the kids are saved by
that was always my biggest beef with this fucking story,
by the demonic forces.
Yeah, like they never. In other Disney movies, they would have gone back and been like, and then Pinocchio frees all the donkeys and they become boys again and girls again. And they just never do that.
Why? I mean,
in either story,
these kids get what they deserve, right?
Oh, but there's
also questionably then the morals of the story.
Okay, so it's interesting because maybe it's going to what Nicole is saying a little bit here is about you can't treat a child with the same read or measurement as you do an adult. Right. Children are not little adults.
Yes.
This process and development that needs to, especially the moral conscious, that's a process of development. When you see something, that moment where you are actualized as self, like this is me, I exist. I'm not an extension of anybody else. I'm not an extension of my parents or my family, but I exist as my own being, and then my actions have consequences, and that's like the journey in early childhood development. So it is a very kind of like, so it's like the boogeyman. It's like, you do bad, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna end up a donkey working the salt mines, right?
So you guys are aware that you guys do have a very contemporary read on childhood, because throughout the existence of mankind, most of the time, children have just been seen not as like these innocent beings that must be protected. That's only like maybe in the last century that we have viewed childhood that way. Prior to that, they were literally almost like livestock.
Property.
Yeah, property, livestock, people to work the farms and stuff. You know what I mean?
But that's why I'm so surprised that the 40s film is actually incredibly dated in the way that they treat the children in the movie, because it was not that long ago. But also, I don't agree with, like, say, maybe Rolando might think that this was the Dark Ages.
Oh no,
like the 40s, they were actually more enlightened than we give them credit for. But we're seeing actually that there was still, like, they were not looking at children in the way that they should be. So like, again, I know what the moral of the story is, and I know that he has to go through all this dark as fuck to learn this moral, and that's like how they wanted to convey it to children back then. Okay, fine. But like the way that they depicted the story was still in contemporary times. The 40s wasn't, actually, now that you think about it,
it's almost 100
years. This is almost 80 years ago.
Yeah,
this was about 80
we're
years
20
ago.
years from being a century.
So it is so crazy because there are some ways that, they weren't so different from you and I, and then in other ways they completely were, and like, my God, how things have changed. So it's interesting because I'm more so like not the actual moral of Pinocchio. I'm talking about the 1940 representation, or at least through the lens of what they told, and the things that they weren't aware of, and the way that they did not give two shits about the children aspect of it at all. But Eddie, what were you gonna say?
No. I mean, I was actually, yeah. I was gonna refer something, to the way, Hebrew scriptures recognize, children, but
Oh,
it wouldn't
Mm.
apply. It wouldn't apply.
oh,
It wouldn't
oh!
apply.
Did you realize the Hebrews were also
No,
back
no, no.
then?
There was property, but there was also, in some of the New Testament,
Uh huh.
scriptures, there is a different approach, a different look at the poor, at
Mm.
women and children, and
Mm.
beginning to see a value, um in not as property,
I see.
but
Yeah.
as the faithful ones.
I see.
So giving them acknowledgement.
Even in mythology, you have really fucked up stories that at the base core of it are actually really talking to things that I think like morals and stories that we could still relate to today. But fairy tales, not so much. And fairy tales are not the same as mythology because they have more so like the once upon a time and then happily ever after thing. Greek mythology, or not just Greek mythology, mythology in general doesn't believe in happy endings.
I think I think
Um,
the major difference is that fairy tales, we usually can find the source of the creation of fairy tales. Not all of them, but like predominantly a lot of them, we know the sources. Mythology is more like a collective cultural thing.
Um, I mean, I suppose that is one way of putting it, but I think also like they just have different intentions, and I think
A
that
story structure.
mythology is more intrigued as to getting metaphors for human behavior, where fairy tales just kind of want to tell a story, maybe. And mythology wants to do it through a story, but this is the whole intent. Like this is why we have like spiders, and that's why they weave webs because of this character that Athena turned into a spider, whose name I can't remember right now. So stuff like that. But I think that the writer of this too, like it's interesting, like the core and like the reason that the person, I can't really speak to it. Obviously, we're talking about the 1940s one, but it's like I don't know. Like I feel like it was really fucked up, and they're not really in tune with what they're trying to say. Like the message at the core of it, which is like be a good boy and listen to everybody and be brave, truthful, and unselfish, gets kind of lost in the weeds with all the situations that they put them through.
Does it?
Um,
Because more or less, isn't this just a child version of like a hell almost? Like, you
um,
get literally you do your sinful ways, and now you're gonna get sucked up by these smoke monsters, and
You're such a bad smoke monsters.
and you're
That is
going to
hellish.
be
Her name was Arachne.
Arachne, yeah, and that's why we have arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia.
Yeah, thank you so
mm,
much. Yeah, Arachne, the character. Um,
and now they're gonna go do labor, like usually are depicted in hell, like usually doing like a repetitive staff over and over again until eternity.
yeah, I guess I would be more like, hey, I get that message if it was guarded like meant for adults. And I think maybe then you're right in terms of the contemporary view that we have of children. But it's hard to, put that all on someone who's not even fully formed up here, up here yet.
I know. Well, you're trying to
Um,
put those messages, get those. Like I don't know. Like it seems like Walt Disney was really trying to make good children out of us. It
I
makes
guess
sense, right?
so.
Weren't the this was during the time of the war, right? Like weren't a lot of families split because men were off fighting the good fight, and
Well, not
women
quite yet,
who
because we joined in
oh we're not
1941,
oh
and
see I
this
don't
came
know
out in
my world history, so
1940.
there you go. My read on that is just off.
I mean, we came out of the Great Depression, and things were kind of picking up and whatnot, but we
Uh,
were all, we were headed towards the war, and I think he just wanted to tell a classic fairy tale.
yeah, maybe. Oh, I was gonna. But any thoughts on like which they preferred? Like which version of this part is the preferred version? I have one.
They're both such fucked up scenarios. I guess the original.
Yeah, no, the original one is way better than the remake. Like in
They
the
just
remake,
added a lot in the remake.
yeah, in the remake, we are in that scene for like a solid 15 minutes, and it just didn't have the same oomph that the animated version had. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
no, it didn't.
it was kind of disappointing. And when I was a kid, that scene when the kids become donkeys was pretty horrifying to me as a child. To the fact that even when we were watching the new one, I told Eddie, I was just like, oh god, that scene used to scare me so much as a kid. And then when we saw this one, he's like, oh, was this horrifying? I'm like, in a different way, but it didn't hit as much as like the original one did. And then when I rewatched it, I was just like, oh, it still doesn't hit like when I was a kid, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't slap.
It's a kid saying "help me" and then all of a sudden transforming into a donkey is
before your very eye.
Kind of fucked up, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me it will always be messed up, but
I'm curious to see what Guillermo del Toro would do with that because I'm pretty sure.
Seriously.
I think that
I hope it's like ripping the skin just rip. You see the muscle,
and that's all. And then I think the most important thing is like, do we know if that's part of the original story? And it looks like, yeah, the coachman, and it wasn't Pleasure Island, but that part of the story does take place in the original. So, God only knows what Guillermo del Toro is going to do.
Well, the very last thing is that when Pinocchio returns home after all of this, he finds that Geppetto is gone and went out looking for him in the middle of the ocean. And so, in the original, I do believe it's the Blue Fairy that assists him in finding Geppetto.
Yeah, the Blue Fairy sends a letter with a dove.
Yeah,
and then they find out that he's been swallowed by Monstro. Monstro has been swallowed by Geppetto.
But in the new one, Sophia comes back and helps
them
Pinocchio to Geppetto.
Yeah, so in the remake, Jiminy Cricket has heard tales of a monster that lives in the sea who looks like an island, right? As they're swimming off of Pleasure Island to land. The reason Geppetto went off onto sea is because Sophia gave Geppetto like a flyer for Pleasure Island. And Geppetto deduced that, oh my God, he's in Pleasure Island, so I have to go look for him in Pleasure Island. That's why he sold all his cuckoo clocks to go get a boat and go off to Pleasure Island. And this is kind of where like the remake hasn't been good, but like I feel like this is where it goes crazy town banana pants, you know.
Why did it go crazy town banana pants?
You know, you have a bird helping Pinocchio jet ski to Geppetto. You have all of a sudden like Pinocchio being able to become like a motorboat. It was so silly and bizarre, and I was just like, this is really stupid. And also, this is the worst acting I think I've seen from Tom Hanks, because there's a certain point where like I think he looks at the cricket and I think it's him realizing it's like, this is what my career is now. This is right. But like I think the other thing is not just his acting though, it's kind of the filmmaking, and this is where I take big issue. Like you could tell everything was CGI to the point that like they're not even using water to get people wet, like they're just wet. Like you have some opportunities here where you could do practical filmmaking and then zhuzh it up with CGI, but they didn't do that. They just went CGI, and it was kind of just like, it was annoying. This was my least favorite part of the film.
Yeah, I mean, by this point, I was ready for the film to be over.
Yes.
There's like a joke where Pinocchio says everything he does, and Tom Hanks Geppetto says, "You did that all in a day," and it just doesn't land as a joke. Like he doesn't even deliver it that funny. You know?
I laughed at that part. I think.
Wow.
I thought it was funny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I had more issue. I think once they're in the stomach, I think from there it just kind of like was derailed. And also by this point, the nose thing doesn't come up again, because in the animated one it came up one last time when he's telling Geppetto where was he lies and stuff, and then he catches himself lying, and then like, you know, we at least get that trope one last time. Like here, the nose grows just once.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that I didn't like necessarily mind. I think for me in the original, you know, like Pinocchio essentially he sacrifices himself to save Geppetto from the whale, and he seemingly dies in the first one, and they like bring his body, his wooden never was really alive body home. But in the new one, they just like brings him into like this cave, and it's Geppetto that he thinks dies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like this reversal, and I think it's like this whole opportunity for Pinocchio to learn, you know, get another star. Like Pinocchio earned the power of love, or whatever it was that they're trying to go for, which I actually think in the original works more that Pinocchio dies. You know,
how
much more can this?
It works way more. that Pinocchio dies. I think in this other one, because here's the other thing, right? Pinocchio has been kind of dumb and naive throughout this whole film. All of a sudden, he understands the concept of death that not one person explains to him. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was silly. And then what brings Geppetto back to life? Right? It was the tear, but what was that? The blue fairy magic? I
think so. Yeah, some bullshit like that.
It was silly because at least in the original 1940 film, he did the brave thing. He did the honest thing. I think there was one more task that he was supposed to do.
Unselfish.
Oh, and unselfish, right. He died.
He sacrificed himself.
Yes, he died for Geppetto, and as a result, Geppetto's wish comes true. He becomes a real boy.
And I think it also like works because then like Geppetto's like, wow, what the fuck is wrong with me? I sent this kid off to school and now he's dead. Like the sins of the father really take, but it's like it's all on Pinocchio's shoulders in the new one, and he has to hopefully wish for his father to survive.
Now, I was thinking more about this last night, and rewatching this is just like there is still a horror about the original 1940 ending, which is just that Pinocchio is a child being raised by an old man who in 1880 I think is probably as close to death as they come, probably. So like, who's gonna raise this kid, this poor naive child?
True.
Honest John, not Jiminy. It would be worse heads at that point. Just let him become a salt licking donkey.
This is very true. Well, also in the new one, it became even more worrisome because it's like, so what? Pinocchio's just gonna, I think it's somewhat implied that he was slowly going to become a boy, but they kind of left it open ended.
We see him become a person, but like Jiminy Cricket implies that that's what the story is told. Who knows what happens, right?
Yes. So then, like,
they left it ambiguous, which was like kind of,
which is not needed.
It was.
But I guess they were trying to say like the moral of the story isn't always to be like a real person. The moral is to appreciate people for who they are and what they can give you. Which also just like, is that the whole story that we were like? Is that the ending that story needed? Is to accept people for who they are? Do you think that that's a read from Pinocchio that we needed with that ending? Like I didn't.
Is that the ending that you thought?
It's kind of like what they seem to be hinting at. Like why else are they making it ambiguous?
Because I thought we get in our heads that the whole idea is him becoming a real boy. That's like the journey. That's what the Blue Fairy said. You do these things and you'll be gifted as a real boy one day. But then when you have this ending where he says maybe he did, maybe he didn't, and that didn't really matter, and it also indicates too that at some point Jiminy stopped being his conscious.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's true
because he doesn't know for sure. Like the way he said it, like he didn't give a definite answer. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
And as we're just discussing it now, I don't know if being who you are, that's not the ending that necessarily I got. If anything, the ending that I would have gotten is just like, it's not necessarily that he became a real boy. He was always a real boy because he has a real soul, right? Because he helped his father. He picked to save his father. You know what I mean? And
So then the question asks, as a 2022 remake of this classic story and this classic film, did it work?
No.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, the end. Like, nah, it did not.
Yeah, I didn't wish upon any stars for this one, and definitely my dreams did not come true.
No, yeah, it was just like, I don't know. Like, the main critique for this film was that it felt soulless, and I would agree 100%. This was another soulless Disney remake, right? It felt just as wooden as Pinocchio did before he turned into a boy.
I think they're also just trying to like go back and fix some of their old films, and it's like just leave them alone. Like these films are flawed, and it's fine that they're flawed. It's fine that they're products of their generation.
It made me appreciate the Dumbo one much more.
Okay,
because the Dumbo one
was terrible.
Not a good movie, but at least it tried to be something different.
Oh yeah.
As the original. I think the original was like how to be a good little boy. I think it's evolved ultimately to be what does it mean to be human and stuff. And I think because the Disney ones have so much morality attached to it, it kind of that message feels old because of the morality behind it. But you know, as we saw with, I think AI is a great example of a good Pinocchio story. You know, not.
I have never seen that movie, so I got.
It's not. It's a long movie,
movie.
I think it's like.
I don't mind length.
I don't know.
I think it's.
I think it's.
I feel like it should have got to the point sooner.
Yes,
but
that's the thing. I think it might be too long.
Like a lot of scenes that are like, okay, I got the point. Let's go. But,
a lot of people are saying that it's a hidden Spielberg masterpiece. Like people were on.
It is a very. I think it's a very, very good movie.
I enjoyed it.
It's not my favorite Spielberg film, but I think it's overall it's a wonderful story and stuff. And it's Pinocchio. If you know Pinocchio, that's what this movie is. AI, and I think it is. To Eddie's point, I think what makes that story work is not the morality that it's attached to Pinocchio. It's about the core crux of it being what does it mean to be a human and stuff. And that becomes a much more fascinating story, which is why I would be more excited to see what Guillermo del Toro does with this one, because I feel like the morality is going to be a little bit more removed and it will be more focused on like, what does it mean to have a soul?
Yeah, I would agree soulless then, because you're talking about, you know, what it is to be human, and this film is like completely CGI'd. It doesn't even feel like people were involved with it, you know? Yeah. So like there's like this great divide between the messaging and then the approach. I think that actually like affects the quality of the film in a way.
Oh, totally. Did you see the ending when like Pinocchio holds Geppetto's hand and how terrible that CGI looked?
Yeah. Anytime like when they hugged, it was so bizarre.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh man.
I don't know why they couldn't just CGI a puppet. Just paint an actual marionette size like him. Paint him green for the green screening.
They didn't even have a real fucking cat, man. The cat was completely CGI'd.
Yeah.
Cats are hard to work with. They're such.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. They're the worst animal to work with.
Oh my god.
They take so many breaks. Cats take so many breaks. And the union is like so supportive on it.
But what about you guys? Did you watch the new Pinocchio? Did you enjoy it? I'm going to guess probably not. But if you did or didn't, let us know. Hit us up on Instagram. Our handle is Remakes, Reboots, Revivals. We're also on Facebook. Facebook.com/Remakes, Reboots, Revivals. You can also hit us up on Twitter @Remakes Podcast. And if you want to visit some of our older episodes, like we mentioned, I think we said The Witches comes to mind, and
Lion King.
The Lion King, yeah. They're all available on our website, remakesrebootsrevivals.com. And we also have a hotline that you guys can reach us at. Nicole, what's that number?
248-2326. That is 248-2326.
There we go.
We switched it up. I like it.
And wherever you're listening to us, please leave a rating and a review. It will help other listeners find us, which is always appreciated. And that's it, I guess, right? I don't know. Do you have anything else to add, Nicole?
Hi, diddly-dee. This movie wasn't for me.
Yeah, nah, it wasn't for me either. Yeah, on that note, stay unoriginal.